Greetings, beloved star child rising. You are in Christina's Corner. I'm Christina. Welcome back to another edition of Meditation Musings. And so, this message with the Lyran Royal Council, I really enjoyed this one. Um, I was a little kind of flustered and uh, just have a lot going on. I have like about maybe six different projects going on at the same time, a little rattled. And so as I'm sitting there and meeting with the Lion Royal Council, I was asking them, what is my next step on my highest path? I'm trying to prioritize, what should my next step be, you know? And I could feel a lot of energy, right? So I knew something was coming up. And so I just waited and waited and waited. And it seemed like it was waited. And I was like, I know they're trying to say something. I don't know what it is. Um, and then I knew they were showing me. It didn't look exactly like a musical note, but I knew that's what they were showing me. And I said, it's a musical note. And then, I got the confirmation of all the energy, like, yes, yes, yes. And so I said, okay, music. So I was thinking of, the music that I use on my TikTok and Instagram posts. I was wondering if it had something to do, with that. Um, but I was trying to think of what are they talking about? And then it came to me. The message was to harmonize. And I was like, harmonize? That's a beautiful word, harmonize. I was like, you mean like balance? And then it all came flowing through. So what they were saying is to to work my next step would be to work on balancing, like perhaps, putting a schedule together to balance my life out. So I'm not just kind of running around all the time, but have some structure to what I'm doing with all of this that's going on. Like, it's time to eat, it's time to cook, it's time to clean, it's time to, exercise, it's time to, that type of thing. That was part of it in harmonizing. And so I was like, okay, that's an interesting way to put it, like harmony with music. And then this is really interesting. And I hope Grand Madam Tarot, Carol, I hope you're listening to this because you came into this. So, what they were saying is to use music, to keep using music. So, ever since I had the um, the podcast interview with Carol, Grand Madam Tarot, I've been listening to sound baths, like music, because she talked about that quite a bit. And so while I'm working on my laptop, I utilize the music just as background as I'm working. And I don't quite honestly feel, a big difference, but I have been listening. I have been listening to it as I'm working, and it's quite soothing. Um, but they were saying that it is quite effective and to keep doing that. And so what came to mind was like every time I do a podcast or every time I get a message from them, I have a need or an opportunity to use that message. So like with a couple of different podcast interviews that I've had, when I've learned something with them, I was able to apply what I've learned quite quickly in the future. And so it's the same thing with Carol when Carol was talking about, like balancing the chakras, harmonizing, harmonizing with the tones and how that has a strong impact on healing and to help lift your frequency on your cosmic journey. And so I thought that was like really interesting. And so it was also a nod that what I was doing was a good move to help me on my journey. So the message is to harmonize, balance your life out. If you need to come up with a schedule, do that. And if you haven't looked at my interview with Carol, do that because she talks quite a bit about sound and sound healing and sound therapy. And I've been using it, and I got a strong nod from the Lyran Royal Council to keep doing that. They said for me, definitely with the 369, but for the listeners who are drawn to this message, you listened and and let your as you go within, um let your guides guide you to what type of sound therapy is best for your needs. Okay, and so that's the message for today, and so it is. Love and light to you.